Hi, and thanks for tuning in again to this episode. This is your one-stop shop for tips, information, and access to resources so that this is going to give your child an advantage. So last Sunday, I was talking to a parent at church, and she wondered why it seemed as though more and more children were being diagnosed with ADHD. So it brought me back to one of the very first classes that I took as a part of my doctorate, when I was in pursuit of my doctorate in early childhood education. And I was explaining to her all about brain development and executive function. So don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with a lot of scientific mumbo jumbo. But it does boil down to this. From birth through adolescence, children's brains are developing, and they're developing certain portions of the brain that are in control of what they call executive function. It's like the air traffic control center of the brain, and it rapidly expands and grows the most rapidly during the ages of 3 through 5 years old. So why is this important? These particular areas control things like working memory, your inhibitory responses, or your impulse control. It also controls your cognitive capacity in terms of learning. And all of these things you need in school settings as well as in life. So teachers are among the first people to kind of notice or realize if there's some issues early on with paying attention, managing your emotions, completing tasks, and verbally expressing yourself or communicating your wants and your needs. So what happens is that researchers have done some studies looking at brain development, and one study in particular done by Harvard University's Center for the Developing Child says that a young child's environment is extremely important and is a major contributor to the development of these areas of the brain. So these researchers discovered that our responses to stress, and in particularly toxic stress, or continued prolonged exposure to stressful conditions, stressful experiences, these things greatly influence these developing areas. So what happens is when the brain perceives some sort of stressful situation, your body's glands release adrenaline and cortisol. And these chemicals are meant to help the body cope with this stressful situation. But too much of it can alter the brain's delicate development of the very important control centers that you need that are going to help you do things like making decisions and being able to prioritize taking care of certain things and multitasking while you're filtering out distractions. So what does this look like? So it really looks a little bit more like a very noisy or chaotic environment. There's lots of noise, lots of light going on, lots of flashing. Perhaps there's going to be some noise outside of the home, like sirens, extra things going on, any sort of unpredictable situation where kids feel like they're not in control. It keeps their bodies and their minds in a constant fight or flight situation where they're not very sure about what the outcomes are going to be. So if there's no way or no one helping them to cope with these stressors, then they are left to their own devices to figure out how to keep themselves safe or when the next time this is going to happen. So all of these things really impede their body's ability to develop these particular sections of the brain in normal circumstances. So if you think about it, 50 or 70 years ago, society as a whole was a lot quieter. There was not a lot of extra noise going on. There was not as much crime and violence as we are experiencing today. So we have to be mindful of the fact that children, and very young children, are not oblivious to noises and stressors and things that will impede their abilities to cope with stress in the future. So what does this mean for your child? So really what you want to do is just start thinking about the environment that your child is in. What kinds of stresses may they be under? And a lot of times we think that kids are resilient and they bounce back, and so-and-so didn't even know that argument happened, and they did. So take the time to check out your child's environment, talk to them a little bit, and see what kinds of things are stressing them out, and help them to be able to cope with things in terms of everything's going to be okay, this is not something that you should worry about, so that it helps them to be a little calmer and be able to take looking at those stressors that kind of transfer into the way they have to function in a classroom with other people. It will help them with being able to maneuver those things as well. So if you'd like some more information about brain development, toxic stress, and how it will affect your child in school and at home, check out our website and make sure you hit subscribe. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.